recently had two big die projects at the same time, so I thought I'd take advantage of that and talk about a few more things. These are similar to the side cutters and other the 6-inch circle trimmer die in that we're not punching the whole piece out with this part of the die. What we're doing is using this part of the die to trim away scrap, and the rest of the area is going to be where the leftover piece is, which is actually the target piece in this case. 6-inch sunflower, which was just too big for my saw and my kiln. Well, not my kiln, but my saw, and this thickness of die plate, this general size of die. It's just a little too big to do it all at once, so the approach was to break it down into a die that makes 2 cuts and leaves behind the whole piece. So this is the die, and this is how it works. So it's a matter of creating enough open space in here for the metal to get into, loading the metal into, and this was the right size to where I could chop this design in half basically, and cut half of it once, flip it over, and cut the other half. So that's what we're going to do here. This particular die and ones like it that are complex, and you have what you end up with is when you try to open up this part of the die, the outer part here, you also want to push these areas down. So, but when you try to open this outer part up, it pulls these open and makes it even harder to open the whole thing. So you're going to have to work it a little bit from both directions instead of all from one direction like normal pancake dies. Let's see. There. Now, so that was the original cut right there. What we do is flip it over 180, not 180, just flip it over. And then it becomes a matter of lining up this curved tip over here, matching those two together, and then this space, half a space, with the other half space. It's a little bit slower, but you can come out with pretty clean parts that way. And that's it. Now the other one I did, somebody asked me how, they saw one similar to that and asked me how big of a sun I could make, and I sat down with the pencil and paper and figured out that I could do it a 10-inch sun, but it would take 5 cuts. So I designed this die so that it cuts, you can think of a 10-inch circle here. Let's see. Well, this one's fully mapped out and fully cut, but what I looked at it in 5 sections of 72 degrees each, so you had five pieces of the pie to make up the full pie here, and designed a die that would cut away the scrap around 1/5 of the circle. And there are actually the easiest way to get going is, I found that, you know, there are, to make this the master pattern, I mapped it out, drafted it out, got exact, but it turns out that in production the easiest way to do it would be just to take this piece and mark your bigger piece of metal with only the tips. That's what this circle is here. Just the tips are marked, and that's all you have to line up inside the die, are those tips. See, what I'm looking at right here, and I'm looking at right there. When I line those up with the scribed lines from the master pattern, more or less perfectly aligned cuts. Now this die is the same way. You can see how trying to open it the normal way causes this middle piece to push up too and become harder to open. So the way to get around that is to help it go the direction it wants to go for the die to be open, which is down that way. And now it's open, except for that. So another 1/5 going in, and I'm lining it up here and lining it up there. This metal here is probably, I think it's 28 gauge aluminum. So fortunately I made this die nice and tight. It'll cut that with no problem. I think the person wants it for maybe 20 gauge copper, which is fine. Fourth cut here. So it's slower, but it's it's not that slow once you get the hang of it. Ow. Got a little fight there from being in such a hurry. Okay, fifth and final cut. And there you have it. 10-inch sun. 5 cuts from a pancake die that's actually small enough to make. Because a pancake die that for the whole sun, that's ridiculous. I had one almost that big. It was a leaf, but the die was, you have to scale up the thickness, so it was a 1/4 inch thick die, 12 inches by probably 2 feet long, and it weighs 20 or 30 pounds and costs a boatload to have cut. It's way too big for me to saw out, so that's not practical. This brings it back into the realm of, you know, something that maybe not practical for everybody, but certainly doable.